you very much for that introduction, and thank you also for the invitation to come today. I feel very honoured to be a social scientist, largely amongst historians, and I've had an absolutely fascinating day. I've enjoyed the talks, and I'd like to commend all the speakers for their really wonderful contributions. So what I'm going to be doing to finish off is a little bit different. But I can see how very cunningly you've organised the programme chronologically, so I'm following on from Rosamund's talk and bringing you up to date, I hope. So I'm talking very much about a contemporary phenomenon, but it's one that does have a historical basis that I'll be talking about as well. And I am coming from a social science perspective rather than that of a historian. So a little bit of terminology. I'm talking about the phenomenon of patient and public involvement in the NHS. And this refers both to patient and public involvement in NHS service development and delivery, but also involvement in medical, clinical health research, which Rosamund alluded to in the talk previously. But to set the scene and perhaps explain where I hope my slightly provocative thinking comes from, I want to tell you a little bit about my involvement with involvement. So for the last decade or so, I've been doing involvement in health research at King's College London. Obviously, as the social scientist in the team, I was quite clearly the right person to be doing this. So for the last 10 or so years, I've been running this patient panel, some of whom you can see up there in the slide, who are all people who've had a stroke and have been recruited to a population epidemiological register that we run in South London Stroke Register. The way that we do this is that we meet up every 6 weeks, essentially, to discuss research, specific stroke research. I've also been working with the King's College London Guy's and St Thomas's Biomedical Research Centre, which is a funded research infrastructure to conduct translational research, as it's called. So to conduct research that leads very quickly from the laboratory to the bedside where the patient is. And through this involvement work then, I've been trying to develop a programme of research with my postdocs and PhD students to begin to think quite critically about involvement, about what it means for practice, for quality, but also a little bit about what it might mean for the ways that we're trying to reconfigure the patient, something we've already talked about today, and by extension, the way that we are trying to reconfigure the citizen and the relationship between the citizen and the state through health. However, I did have an earlier experience of health activism, let's call it, when I was living in Italy. After I finished my PhD, I had the opportunity to go back to Italy and worked in Milan, first of all as a volunteer for an AIDS community group, an AIDS patient activist group, and then employed by the organisation. And this organisation, Associazione Solidarietà IVS, was the first in Milan to be set up by a community group. And this was at the time when the Italian government, like many other governments, was in complete denial about the seriousness of the growing epidemic. So ASA, as it's called, organised to provide information about HIV transmission, but also to deliver a range of services to people that are already affected by the virus. So, for example, domiciliary care, imported from the UK and from the US, the concept of peer support, and also psychological counselling. So this is a picture of me at the 1990 conference in Florence, joining an ACT UP demonstration. And then the other picture on the right is one of the things that our organisation tried to do, really to raise public general awareness about the epidemic. Again, another idea imported from abroad. Some of you may have heard of the Quilt Project, or the Names Project, where quilts are made essentially to commemorate someone who's died from AIDS. So we would have this annual display in one of the galleries of downtown Milan. And we also imported from the States, I think, another commemorative and awareness-raising activity, called the AIDS Candlelight Memorial. So a range of services by this group, and a kind of really, if exciting isn't quite the right word, an exciting experience of health activism, patient activism. But these are two very contrasting experiences of what we might broadly call involvement, and they both shape my perspective in different ways. Because the argument that I really want to advance is the way that involvement, or patient public involvement, or PPI is the acronym we're going to be using, is shaped within the NHS context, and that refers both to service delivery and to research. And patient activism are two very similar but two very different phenomena. So my starting point is that public and patient involvement in the NHS, PPI, is state authorised and defined. So let me just show you some more pictures. And this is a kind of typical image of how PPI might be performed. I'm sure, Rosamund, you recognise this. It's taken from Involving London website. I've sat on tables like that, many of us have, yeah. But by contrast, this is the image of patient activism that, for my purposes, speaks volumes really about the relationship between the patient activist and the state. So here, obviously, law enforcement of the state organised to protect property, where this lone activist, he wasn't actually alone, he's with other people, is staging a demonstration on that building there. And in fact, an important difference could be that health activism, unlike NHS involvement, usually starts in opposition to state definitions, activities, or in the case of the early HIV community groups, lack of activity from the state. So that's setting the scene. What I want to talk about is to go through in a bit more detail what PPI in the NHS and the National Institute of Health Research are. I want to stop for a minute and not assume that involvement is a self-evident good, but think about why we are involving. I'm going to talk about some of the problems that people are concerned about in PPI. And then I'm going to try and advance this perhaps slightly shaky argument that it's quite useful to think of PPI as symbolic action. And I'm going to do that with reference to two studies that I'm working on at the moment. One is a study of what's called a major system transformation or reconfiguration of the way that acute or emergency stroke services are organised in London and Greater Manchester. And then I'm going to be talking about a paper that colleagues and I are working on at the moment, which is an amalgamation of three individual ethnographic studies of PPI research groups, like the ones that I showed the pictures of before. So, sorry, not yet. Save that pleasure for just a minute. So let's turn first of all to patient and public involvement as defined by the NHS and the National Institute of Health Research, which is the research wing, if you like, of the NHS. So I think this is a very specific phenomenon characterised by its authorisation by state institutions who define what involvement is and what it isn't, and they've established a range of processes that guide the conduct of involvement and through which its performance can be verified. So this patient and public involvement in health service delivery has been widely promoted by UK state agencies for at least the last 2 decades. I think we heard a little bit about that in this morning's talk. And involvement in health service change is a legal requirement for NHS organisations. But it's more than this, I think. Beyond this, it's widely accepted as a legitimate thing to do, and according to some authors, has acquired the status of normative practice. In other words, it's uncontroversially standard practice, just what we should be doing. And the promises of involvement in the NHS are typically to do with these kinds of things: empowering people to play a greater role in shaping health and social care services, putting patients at the heart of everything the NHS does, for instance. It's a well-known slogan here. and it's necessary for an open, accountable and patient-centred service. So in terms of PPI in health research, it's common in the literature to trace its rise to the work undertaken in the 1990s by what was then a standing advisory committee on what was called consumer involvement. Again, echoes with the previous talk, that was convened by the NHS at the time. And this was the period of the reforms of the Thatcher major governments that we've heard about before, when the internal market was introduced, and so patients were recast as consumers, exercising choice in the market of healthcare. But this report also set the agenda for what would become contemporary patient and public involvement in the National Institute of Health Research. So here's a quote from that report from 1996. By consumer involvement, we mean the active involvement of consumers in the research process rather than the use of consumers as the subjects of research. This involvement might occur in any or all of the processes involved in research: setting the research agenda, commissioning research, undertaking research, interpreting research, and disseminating the results of research. And now, some 20 years later, the BMJ apparently has caught on and decided that it's going to make sure that that is adhered to by those who want to publish there. And in this report, what they did also was to set out the aims and values, a number of ideas about the patient knowledge and wishes, and the need for professionals to acknowledge these and to treat patients accordingly. But I think what's interesting about this statement of values is that most of its principles related not to research per se, but could be read as constituting a mission statement that set out why the category of patient needs to be thought through again and needed to change, and implying a need for a transformation of the relationship between patients and professionals. Of course, health activist groups have long made similar sorts of claims, not because patients were consumers who should exercise choice in a market, but because they objected to the ways in which state and medical authorities defined problems and proposed solutions in accordance with those definitions. So, albeit couched in different language and with a slightly different, you could argue that, but perhaps a slightly different ideological orientation, reforms carried out by subsequent Labour governments continued this commitment to public involvement. So, for example, a 2005 paper creating a patient-led NHS envisioned the patients and public as having a much greater say in the way the NHS is planned and developed, how it operates and how it can better respond to their needs and expectations. Another paper, Best Research for Best Health, set out the government's new health research strategy that, again, using very similar sort of language, aimed to place people at the centre of a research system that focuses on quality, transparency and value for money. And this paper set out the strategies that aim to maximise effective public involvement and empower people to play an active role in research. And these included continuing to fund its advisory body, which was renamed Involve and still exists, to ensure that the policy was known and enacted. So the reforms also saw the establishment of this organisation, the National Institute of Health Research, whose funding streams very early on began to require applicants to show how their studies would involve patients and the public. So involvement has been taken up by a vast range of UK health agencies, such as the regulatory bodies, professional bodies, Royal College of Surgeons, obviously, and medical charities. So I would argue that in a remarkably short period of time, involvement has been rhetorically and structurally embedded in the field of publicly funded medical research. But I think this involvement in research is also rather codified, where patient activist groups define their own agendas and ways of working. PPI is organised centrally through well-defined structures and processes, and is integrated into the architecture of the NHR. And this includes guidelines. So, for example, this very well-known document, Briefing Notes for Researchers, basically tells researchers what PPI is and the ways that they should do it and why they should do it. It sets out the strategies through which citizens can be prepared for involvement. And it's very keen that citizens, that patients should be trained before they get involved in involvement. There's some suggestion that we might want to draw up a job description for people who get involved, or a person specification for people who get involved. Some positions insist on recruiting through a quite formal interview process. As I said, training and support, ongoing support is seen as good practice. And there's also guidance on the need for accessibility for lay people, both in terms of the physical spaces where you meet and the language that you use. But I think the novelty of patient and public involvement in health lies not in the fact that people wish to contribute to health and health service improvement. As we all know, there's a long history of activism across a range of conditions: mental health, disability, reproductive rights, HIV and so on. And these have always sought to challenge orthodox definitions, to redefine rights to access to care, champion needs for research, as we saw this morning, and demand improved quality of care. Rather, I think the novelty lies in the enthusiasm with which state organisations, and increasingly others, have embraced and promoted this particular concept of involvement as a self-evident good, even though, as I'm going to perhaps rather perilously argue, I think the evidence for this remains at best slender. So I think it's tempting to argue that by taking up the cause of PPI, state institutions have appropriated, in a sense, the power that groups of citizens themselves have exercised to organise themselves to challenge clinical research, scientific or state authorities. So taking a clue from Max Weber, the famous sociologist, it could be argued that PPI represents a bureaucratisation of this form of citizen action, or a routinization of the charismatic power that drives and characterises, initially at least, these self-organising protest movements. So the question then is, if this is so, what are the consequences of this? I keep getting ahead of myself on the slides, sorry, forget that. Right, we're still on that one. So now I want to ask the question, why involve, or what is PPI for? And I think, at least in terms of PPI in research is concerned, this has really received critical attention. So many years ago, I took part in a meeting which had been organised by Involve, especially for health researchers. And in this meeting, I tried to make the point that, from my experience, convincing my clinical colleagues and other health professionals of the value of PPI was difficult, because it was hard to say that there was any evidence of what benefits PPI might bring. And I was suddenly taken to task by another participant at the meeting who shouted me down with the words, "This isn't about evidence, this is about something else." So what might this something else be? There isn't a single answer to this question. In fact, there are quite a few different rationales underpinning the promotion of PPI. So now I want to outline three arguments that have been made to promote PPI. First of all, there's a kind of empowerment or emancipatory argument. There's the argument that involvement of this kind promotes democratic participation. And then there's an argument that it leads to improved quality in healthcare and in research. So the first one, PPI is emancipatory practice. This is an argument, I think, that comes really from patient activist groups, that involvement promotes emancipation from oppressive biomedical definitions and practices. This rationale overtly challenges a biomedical framing, for example, of mental health or disability, and proposes social models of differences from the norm. It seeks to address stigma and disadvantage by promoting the empowerment of oppressed individuals and groups, and claiming the right to develop their own solutions to their problems. For example, by conducting their own research, defining their own research question, coming up with their own interventions. And this approach really does draw on civil rights arguments in which subaltern categories of people can improve their situation by challenging the very basis on which their oppression was predicated. Involvement as emancipatory practice therefore requires the development of new conceptual categories and removes the old boundaries between lay and expert, patient and professional. So let's look briefly at this idea that PPI promotes democratic participation, which is another of the rationales that's used in the literature. So this could be, and the argument here, for example, one argument is that this is in relation to the rights of citizens who, through their fiscal contributions, are or should be automatically engaged in decision-making about public institutions. So, crudely, this argument asserts that since health services and health research are funded through tax, those same taxpayers have the right to say how their money is spent. And this argument, I think, is reinforced by slightly different concern, the concern about the reduction in levels of democratic participation. As we can see, every election with a low concern about the low voter turnout. So in the light of these sorts of concerns, encouraging citizens to participate directly in day-to-day decision-making processes about services funded through taxation will enhance democratic ideals of communality, transparency, equity, and so on. But I think the most commonly used and the most explicit rationale put forward from the NHS and the National Institute of Health Research is that PPI will lead to an improvement in quality. And we see this most explicitly in, I'm sure many of you will recognise this woman, and this quote is often used, and certainly I've used it a lot myself. So this is Professor Dave Sally, Chief Medical Officer, and until recently I think the head of the National Institute of Health Research. No matter how complicated the research, or how brilliant the researcher, patients and the public always offer unique, invaluable insights. Their advice when designing, implementing, and evaluating research invariably makes studies more effective, more credible, and often more cost-effective. So I think two factors are at play here. One is the concern that service and research quality are deficient, though certainly in terms of research, we don't really know what the baseline is, so we can't compare it. And the other one is this notion that patients bring something very different, a different kind of knowledge, and it's usually referred to as experiential knowledge. So the knowledge that they acquire on the basis of having an illness, using a health service, and so on. So the idea is that patient experiential knowledge is a kind of resource that can be brought to the table and used by researchers to drive up the quality of their research. And this is actually being explicitly stated in at least one paper by Karen Flinton and colleagues. This notion that experiential knowledge is a resource that's available for science to be used. So these different arguments, and there are others that I could go into, are given different prominence by different groups and at different times and places. For example, in the involved briefing notes that I flashed up on the slide before, this invokes both the democratic and the quality arguments as reasons for which the public should be involved in research processes. But I think one way of looking at what these arguments have in common is that they apply a challenge to traditional organisational, medical and scientific authorities. And this includes the authority of institutions and their agents to decide what's best for citizens, the authority of medical experts to define or frame health, and the authority of scientists to decide which avenues of research are worth pursuing and which aren't, and to set the parameters of how studies should be conducted. So it could be argued that that these implicit shifts in boundaries constitute an opening up of new spaces and the development of new sorts of relationships between professionals and lay people. But there are also concerns about PPI at the moment. Public involvement is established in the minds of people who the NHS and medical research, there are noble aspirations about the difference that involvement could make. But the literature and the day-to-day experience of people that I talk to doing PPI show that there are a number of ongoing areas of anxiety, and one new emergent concern that I'm going to talk about. First of all, there's a concern about who these patients are. Often this is framed as a concern with representativeness. The argument from this perspective is that it's all very well to engage patients and the public, but will the rights of the people come along? For the wrong sort of people have variously included activists, who aren't thought to represent the average punter, who probably have an agenda of their own, and who might want to derail what professionals and institutions actually think is the best. But there are also what's called the usual suspects, the same people who turn up to everything. And this raises concerns that by hogging the limited opportunities for civic participation and health involvement, others might be excluded. And if the usual suspect is articulate, educated, white, middle class, then by extension this reveals concerns that we're failing to involve those who don't fall into those categories. But I think the problem of who the patient is also strays into the ontological, their very patientness. Jonathan Ives and colleagues recently wrote a wonderful paper in the Journal of Medical Ethics called Who's Sailing the Ship, that I recommend you have a look at. It's quite a controversial argument that they're proposing, I think. So they say that lay people who get involved are deemed to require training, and that's regarded widely as good practice by involved, this organisation, and indeed by grant-making bodies. Did you include funding for training these people who've been involved in your research? So he said that Ives and colleagues say they have to do this training to take on this role, and over time they acquire expertise. And they say, Ives and colleagues say, that they undergo a process of professional socialisation, and being in this way professionalised, they may be less able to authentically reflect the lay perspective. It's not a question of the lay person losing their identity as lay, but of their lay perspective being tamed to make theirs more congruous with that of the professional researcher. Where this occurs, we might ask what the point of lay representation is. Which brings us nicely on to the next problem, tokenism. So this is quite a commonly expressed anxiety that those professionals like me who are charged with implementing PPI policy do so in a tokenistic way. And a former colleague from King's of mine, Josephina Clue, in 2016 argued that this is evidence in the dominance of PPI's consultation only and failure to adopt a more democratic model of involvement that will address imbalances of power between patients, public and healthcare professionals and organisations. And this theme of power, who's got the power, who's willing to give up the power, how we can take the power, is something that we hear over and over again. As if power were a sort of constituent element that we could hand over from one individual to another. I'm going to talk about impact, which I call here as something that's elusive. So, as you all know, in academia and elsewhere, we're increasingly living in an impact-focused world, where it's no longer sufficient to conduct research and produce new knowledge, but you have to demonstrate that this new knowledge has benefits for society. So there's not enough time to go into the many debates that could be had about this in terms of methods, meanings, what do we mean by impact, how do we measure it, and the consequences of this shift in thinking. But suffice it to say that the notion of impact also extends to the world of PPI. As it's become more firmly embedded in public research structures, there's increasing concern with a need to demonstrate the benefits that PPI brings. Stanishevsky and colleagues have recently argued that demonstrating PPI's impact is important for a number of reasons. We need to know if it works. We need to know if there are negative impacts on people who are involved. We need to know if this is a good use of scarce resources. And just because we need to know, we need an evidence base. There are lots of arguments about that perspective as well that I won't go into now. But I think it's safe to assume that currently there is actually little evidence of what impact PPI has. There have been a number of systematic reviews of individual studies that have concluded it's actually quite difficult to demonstrate how PPI drives up research quality. One thing that is easy to demonstrate is that those individuals who take part in these processes, lay people who take part, do derive benefits. They find something interesting to do, they learn new things, they meet new people, they feel valued, and sometimes they're even paid money. And to illustrate that, here's a quote from an email I received from one of the people in the stroke research group that I run. I've deeply appreciated the opportunity to learn about new research, new ideas related to stroke management and care, and the attitudes of other European countries to stroke matters. Even more importantly, however, the stroke research patients and family group has given a voice to those with experience of stroke. We have the much welcomed opportunity to give input and feedback about structuring information destined for both medical professionals and everyone caught up in stroke care management. It feels like such a huge gift having that opportunity. And I was a bit distraught when I got this email because it felt to me, that being sort of corny in any way, that the gift was actually the other way around. So this group of people were certainly allowing us to fulfill our need to demonstrate involvement. But I think the systematic reviews of the literature that I've referred to do show that it's more difficult to demonstrate benefits in terms of any of the rationales that I've outlined before about why we might do PPI. So emancipation, increased democratic participation, or increased research quality. So it is true that researchers have revised their data collection tools as a result of involvement. Some studies have been prioritised over others following PPI activity, and lay people are increasingly involved in evaluating grant applications, for example. But I think these are largely to do with processes which are much easier to demonstrate than outcomes, which in the case of PPI are multiple, implicit, and even contested. So these reviews do say that it might just be the state of knowledge at the moment, so we're hampered by a lack of evaluation. How do we evaluate PPI? And there's poor reporting in the papers as well. So maybe for now I'll concede that we don't actually really know the answer to the question of what's the impact of PPI. Let me go on to what I've described as this emerging concern that I think is quite telling in thinking about the way we might understand PPI as a form of relationship between citizen and state institutions. It's very clear that PPI in health research is evolving as a concept. The National Institute of Health Research recently produced a report called Going the Extra Mile, which was written after a period of consultation of people active in PPI in order to assess where we're at and to formulate some recommendations for future strategies. This report reiterates a commitment to the PPI imperative, but at the same time signals a shift in thinking. From the outset, as I demonstrated earlier, PPI leaders were very clear that PPI research is different from public engagement in science, and it's different from taking part in a clinical trial as a research subject. But this report says these boundaries are shifting. Traditional notions and definitions of public involvement, engagement, and participation are blurring, as are the boundaries between research and the provision of health and social care services. Moreover, I think what is interesting to read in this is that it moves to the idea that involvement of this kind is not just a right, but perhaps a duty. So here's the bit from the Going the Extra Mile document that is worth looking at. By 2025, we expect all people using health and social care, and increasing numbers of the public, to be aware of and choosing to contribute to research by identifying future research priorities and research questions, informing the design and development of innovations, participating in research studies, advocating for the adoption and implementation of research in the NHS. So the good patient, the good citizen, is enjoined to engage with the processes of health research, and taking part in a clinical trial now seems to be equivalent to working with researchers to design studies. It's too early to say how this shift in boundaries will shape the future landscape for PPI, but already some disquiet has surfaced about the idea of blurring these different types of engagement or involvement. A recent publication in Lancet Psychiatry by Diana Rose, who's Professor of User-Led Research at King's College London, has explicitly criticised this report for implying that recruitment means the same as involvement. To conflate the two is likely to substantially undermine user involvement in research as it's been understood for 20 years, especially in mental health. And I think this speaks again to the disquiet that PPI is sanctioned and promoted by the NHS and the NHR. And it might indeed be an appropriation of a community-based model of involvement or patient activism. So let's conclude from this that PPI promises much, but hasn't delivered on those promises. So why then has it become so firmly entrenched and regarded as a good thing? I'm going to argue that we can see PPI as a kind of ritual activity, a form of political symbolism and political ritual that permits the articulation of a particular vision of citizenship and of the relationship between citizens and state institutions that determine and provide healthcare and produce new scientific knowledge for health. So I'm taking an anthropological approach to symbolic, so I don't use the word to intimate purely symbolic or meaningless or empty. Rather, I mean the opposite, it's full of meaning. But this may not necessarily be an instrumental kind of meaning. It may not necessarily lead to structural changes, rather it may reinforce structure. It may lead to other kinds of changes at an ideational level or a conceptual level. What is the citizen? What is the patient? How do they relate to the state? So I'm going to be doing this with reference to two studies I've been working on. But first of all, let me just think about ritual. So here's two images of rituals that we're probably familiar with in some sense. But ritual isn't confined to activity which is overtly religious in intentional setting. It can also take place in a secular, everyday, political context. And there are lots and lots of definitions of ritual. But in its broader sense, it can be defined as a form of collective symbolic activity, formally organised, set aside from everyday instrumental activity, and directed towards a range of ends, such as, for example, commemoration, marking the transformation of social status, healing, and so on. And rituals are capable of evoking emotion because they're about things that matter fundamentally to us. And symbols and rituals are also characterised by their polyvalence. They can simultaneously point to multiple ideas and can be interpreted in different ways by those who take part. If we had like a whole week, we could go over the arguments that anthropologists and others have had about why ritual exists, but we don't have that. But some examples are Durkheim's view that they serve to promote social cohesion, Turner's idea that they permit representation of beliefs, ideas and values that are otherwise difficult to articulate, or Maurice Bloch's argument from the LSE just around the corner that actually rituals are about an exercise of political power. So for my purpose, I found a recent perspective from Seligman and colleagues useful, and this proposes that we think about ritual as expressing the subjunctive. Ritual creates an evocation of the world as it might be, an order as if it were truly the case. A ritual brings to the fore the idea of the boundaries through which social life is organised, and it permits the possibility of playing with those boundaries. Such boundaries are essential to human existence, of course, but they might also be problematic or contested and open to negotiation. And ritual permits the performance of a kind of renegotiation of those boundaries. So let me turn to my first example. Major system change, the centralisation of stroke services in London and Greater Manchester. And this is a study that's being led by Naomi Fuller from UCL, that I'm involved in. And the idea was that when someone had a stroke, they would no longer go to their local hospital, they would be admitted via the emergency department, but they would go to a limited number of services with very specialised emergency stroke care, the possibility of thrombolyzing, for example, someone who's had a clot. And these were enormous changes. It took many, many years to argue about and to implement. And just to give you an idea of the size of the problem, within 2 years of the implementation of this novel centralised service, over 8,000 stroke patients were admitted to acute services in Greater Manchester and 15,000 in the London area. So I'm not going to give you any more detail than that, but I'm going to focus on one of the questions that we're looking at in this retrospective evaluation, and that's how patients and the public were involved in these very significant NHS changes, and what were the perceived effects of this involvement. Obviously, as I've said, involving the public was a legal requirement here, but it was also deemed prudent because centralisation involved closing some stroke services, always attributing to close NHS services. So, as I said, this was a retrospective study, so for this part of the study, we conducted and analysed qualitative, in-depth interviews with 41 people who were there at the time, who drove ahead the service centralisation in Manchester and London. These were healthcare professionals, managers, people from patient and care organisations. And we also had access to over 300 project documents, such as proposals, consultation reports, and so on. So what did involvement in these cases look like? Well, in both London and Manchester, they took the form of governance arrangements. And this was mostly having a voluntary sector staff on project committees. But in Greater Manchester, a carer was invited to join the committee. There were lots of formal public consultation exercises, particularly in London, where it was very well funded. It was tacked onto the back of the Darcy work that was going on. And one of the sites also used some focus groups and surveys to collect patient data, to collect patient views of the proposed changes. But what did the professionals that we interviewed think about these PPI activities and the effect that they had? So their views were varied, as you might expect, from the very enthusiastic to the slightly cynical. So the enthusiastic view is encapsulated by this voluntary sector worker we interviewed. It was a hugely inclusive exercise, and one that I've been very happy to be quoted as a model in terms of patient involvement. Whereas a more cynical view might be captured by this manager's statement: I don't think it really matters what any of the patients say. But if we look at what the interviewers thought about how the involvement worked, what kinds of differences it made, something more interesting emerges. First, in Greater Manchester, where they had this man who was a carer, there was recognition that actually public agitation for improved stroke care in that area had been one important element for driving service change. And this was pretty much limited to this one man whose wife had had a stroke, who became very active in campaigning for better quality care, but was also a local politician. So the interviewees generally thought that he was very effective, but they described him as constituting the grit in the system. He was very effective, but he was also slightly abrasive. He was listened to in consultation exercises, but actually by being incorporated into the governance structure, you could argue that he was being transformed from the external activist into a PPI representative on the committee. Second, these the interview accounts suggest that what was also important was what I'm calling a process of substantiation, just to go back to the image of the Catholic Mass there. And this refers to the idea that almost universally expressed that PPIs enable service users, stroke patients or carers, to be literally or metaphorically in the room, embodying the stroke, evoking the patient voice, which served as a reminder of the symbolic patient for whose benefits their efforts were directed. And this evocation of the patient voice, was used strategically by those driving the stroke service changes, when arguments about the plans became difficult. Moreover, in this way, the thorny problem of representativeness could be sidestepped, since involvement here was not about being representative in any demographic sense, but in a figurative or symbolic sense, to evoke the moral authority of the patient, whose interests the managers and healthcare professionals were there to serve. And third, we argue that PPI permitted processes of verification. So at a mundane level, this means that patients and carers were asked to check that written materials produced for the project were accessible, reflected their concerns and experiences. But it also refers to some work that was done with patients to preempt concerns about potential closures to local services. But at a more important level, verification meant getting agreement from patients in consultation processes that this was the right way to proceed. And PPI was used strategically by the change leads to argue that they had the support of patients and carers for these changes. And this was also used strategically when opposition was voiced by some local professionals, particularly those who were going to be losing their service, about the changes that were proposed. So they were able to say that the patients and the public agreed that this is the best way to go forward. And I think in this story it's important to note that patient input wasn't being sought to ask about what new stroke services would look like. That had already been decided. But what was also interesting is that when the consultations took place, patients and the public weren't really that interested in what emergency acute care looked like. They were very keen for this care to be very specialised, and they were less concerned about the centralisation that was being applied. What they really wanted to talk about was the poor quality rehabilitation that was available in the community, and why not they doing anything about that. This, of course, was totally outside the remit of the service change. So, rather involvement in this case, I think, served other purposes. Consultations allowed professionals to say they had the support of patients. The patient voice was evoked, the metaphorical patient was invoked to win arguments, and both service changes met their obligation to involve. Involvement was used strategically to push through the changes that professionals had decided on, using epidemiological and hospital statistic data. So let me now turn to the second example that I want to give, which is this sort of comparative analysis of 3 ethnographic studies, which the previous study is very much limited by the fact that it was retrospective. We weren't able, for example, to talk to any patients or public who'd taken part in those involvement activities. But in this study, we are able to do that. And this is a study essentially of these PPI panels, let's call them. So these are the panels that are organised often around a specific disease. They're usually run by researchers, and in this case they're panels of people with cancer, people with stroke, and women who have preterm birth. So all of these panels meet regularly for the purposes of doing PPI research into those specific clinical areas. So as I said, the 3 studies were conducted independently and involved a mixture of participant observations, sort of being there, seeing what happens, and interviews with the patients and professionals. And for this analysis, we're looking at the 3 together to compare how PPI was performed. So when we first looked at the data together, it was really apparent that the structure of all the panel meetings was not only very formal, but also very similar, each following a set of routine practices and following a set of implicit rules about what to do. So these routines usually followed a specific temporal order: arrival, informal chat with tea, coffee, biscuits, welcome, agenda, discussion, thank you, and close. But within this structure, we've identified 3 elements that are typical of the ways in which rituals are structured and performed. First of all, the purpose of it was very much set by the researchers who set the agenda with the specific scope and purpose of what was to happen, and seeking throughout to control this agenda to make sure that it didn't deviate from it. There's also what I'm going to describe as an element of time control, and the use of technical language was also very evident. So time control refers not just to the pragmatics of running a meeting, but also to the fact that anything perceived by the organiser of the meeting as out of scope, off the agenda, could be managed. A good example of this is the way the lay panel members frequently spoke about their own personal experiences of illness or healthcare, and often with very great emotion. But this was seen by the researchers as outside the real purpose of the meeting and its focus on research. But it's a bit problematic because they're there for their experiential knowledge. They're expressing their experience, but that's off the agenda, so it has to be managed. So rather than cutting the speakers off, these stories, which are very frequent, were listened to, but it was as if time was halted for a moment. The story was told and heard, but as quickly as possible, researchers returned the meeting to its proper business. Thirdly, the meetings were characterised by this use of specialised language that participants had to get to learn with varying degrees of success. Rituals are often characterised by the use of a specialised language that may be very formal, maybe a different language altogether from the vernacular, and it may be, as Maurice Bloch has argued, a very restricted kind of language. Nevertheless, failure to understand the language didn't mean that people didn't participate, and this points to the different reasons for which patients and professionals took part. So the interviews with the professionals suggested that from their perspective, the raison d'etre of each of the groups was linked very much to funding requirements. And they were rather less concerned with an ideological commitment to a more democratic research paradigm or to promoting emancipatory practice. However, some researchers, particularly in the stroke group, did speak about an ethical need to engage in dialogue with stroke survivors to ensure that their priorities for research were addressed. But by relying on the ritual structures of the meeting in terms of orientation, time and content, the researchers in these panels ensured that PPI was directed towards their own aims, specifically those of generating grant income and research papers. Yet the patients who took part in these panels also made strategic use of the ritual structures to perform PPI in their own particular ways. So as we've just seen, lay participants use these meetings as an opportunity publicly to narrate the story of their own illness, especially to express the emotions that that illness evoked. Many use this participation for civic or social means as a way of being socially active, but also to meet and communicate and share experiences with those who have the same or similar illness. Thirdly, for some people who took part, participation was a means of acting politically, since it provided opportunities to express their concerns about the quality of NHS services, and for some, to try to hold clinical researchers to account. So what we observed by the study in comparing PPI in 3 different research arenas was something of a paradox. On the one hand, professionals' priority was to demonstrate compliance with PPI policy, and so in so doing ensure eligibility to compete for scarce research funding. For patients, on the other hand, participation offered other kinds of opportunities to express different forms of citizen participation, the public narration of emotional suffering, sociality and civic participation. These 2 different genders might be seen as in competition, yet the PPI agenda wasn't derailed. Structured as ritual, both sets of participants' needs and the meanings that they attribute to them could be accommodated. So the ritual nature of a PPI meeting created a space wherein some key boundaries could be articulated. For example, the boundary between patient and professional, between expert and layperson, between scientific knowledge and experiential knowledge, between citizen and state agencies that organise healthcare and the production of new scientific knowledge for health. So going back to the idea of ritual creating a subjunctive world, and as if world, the PPI meeting permits the imagination of a world where these boundaries are shifted. Thus it creates the possibility that boundaries might be taken down or reorganised. Whether this occurs, and for whom, I think is to be determined yet rather than assumed. So I previously argued that there's little evidence that PPI fulfills its many promises. In other words, we don't know if PPI permanently changes relationships between categories of people or changes the boundary and structures through which healthcare and the production of new knowledge are generated. And in fact, although ritual contains the possibility of transformation, it doesn't always change things. It can affirm and reinforce the status quo. Research suggested contrary to the aims of PPI policy to transform, to produce evolved citizens, to improve research quality, to democratise clinical science, the ritual performance of citizen participation in this model proposed by the NHS and the NIHR engenders a conservative form of engagement in health and corresponding forms of knowledge production. To be sure, for both sets of parties, there are gains. For researchers to play the research game, for lay people there are psychological and social benefits. But my argument is that PPI as state organised involvement contains this potential for transformation. PPI as ritual creates and acknowledges the moral power of lay people, the voice of the patient, but preserves core professionals the power to define and manage the agenda. And I think the reasons for this and its consequences need further consideration. Thank you very much.